Right. So, chain of command. Do we always have chain of command? No? Okay. Why would we not have chain of command?
It's not always as orderly as it should be.
Ah, it's not always as orderly as it should be, but is the chain of command there? Yes, okay? And this is what this slide is all about, and you hit it right on the nose. You're half a step ahead of me, and I love it. Is that if I don't know what my unit of command is, and I don't know what my chain of command is, sometimes do I tend to make some very bad mistakes by going around people that I shouldn't? What tends to happen if I do that? Oh, more angry people. Yes, you're exactly right. Because if I am your general supervisor and you go around me, am I going to be a happy person? No. Okay? So we look at that unity of command. We look at that structure of command itself and who do I answer to? And that's what we're talking about here. Okay? I have to have that line of authority. Who do I report to? Now, in a little while, we're going to talk about span of control. Span of control falls right into this. And we're going to talk about the numbers equated to that span of control. That becomes very important when we start talking about who do I report to and how many people does that person have reporting to them. It becomes very imperative. Okay? We talk about managers to that direct or control acts of all personnel. Okay? I want to be able to direct my personnel. If I have one point of reference that I'm going to go to get what I need to do on a specific incident, is it better to go to one person and say, what do I need to do? Okay? And I get those descriptions from that individual, then I get my marching orders from him, and pretty soon you come in. By the way, I want you to do this. And then she comes in. And by the way, I want you to do this too. And then he comes in and says, by the way, I want you to do this. Are you ever going to get your job done? No, because what do you start doing? Yes, I'm more busy taking orders, just like you said. I'm more busy taking orders than I am functioning on my job. So if I have one person, what do I need to do? How do you expect me to do that? Can I get my job done in an expedient manner? And again, it goes back to that time we talked about earlier. With that time piece, it is not my friend. And if I can go to one person and get my tasks, my time is now cut down. Does that make sense? Good. Questions? All right, great. Okay? If that happens, does that confusion piece now go away? Because if I get my marching orders from one person instead of 3 and 4, could that create big confusion for me? Because one person said one thing and you said another and you said another and he said another. Okay? Now do I get confused? And then what do I tend to do? I not do anything at all, or do what I think is right, what we call freelancing. Okay? Is freelancing a good thing to do on a scene that we are trying to manage resources? No, because if somebody else is doing something and I infringe into there, now if I've even created bigger problems for myself. Yes. Okay? So that confusion piece now becomes relevant, okay? Does not prevent individuals from sharing information, okay? One of the big things that we want to do on any type of an incident, be it, a mitigation of an animal cruelty on a hoarding situation, or we go down to a Katrina incident where we have a lot of those animals that were left when people evacuated out of the area, or we have any type of a tornado where people didn't have a choice, their homes were destroyed, and now we have animals out there that we're trying to take care of. Okay? Anytime that we have that, is information sharing an important piece of that? Sure. Okay? One of the last things you want to do is hoard information for yourselves. Okay? Because that only becomes more difficult for that situation to be remedied. Okay?
So with that, we want to go up, now start going back up to our individual, and then keep going up the chain.
Yes, and the question was, with that information sharing, do we want to take that up to our supervisors and make sure that everybody's in the loop? And the answer is yes, sir. We want to make sure that those individuals across not only our chain of command and who we speak to, but also who we're working with, okay? So that information sharing not only goes up the line, but also goes laterally, okay? So everybody's on the same page. Very good question. Unity of command, we just talked about this a little bit. It's nice to have where I know if you are my general supervisor. If I have an issue, I have a question, I come to you. Okay? And then what do I trust that you're going to do for me when I come to you for that question? Do I tell the general or get the answer for me? Okay? And then come right back to me. Because if I don't do that and I go to each one of the individuals throughout that incident, do I know that I'm going to get the same answer from everybody? No. Okay? Now, again, we get into that confusion. So I go to the one source, I go to the one individual, and I keep that integrity intact. It cuts down time, cuts down confusion, and it gets me to the end point of getting the job done. Okay? We talk about planning an organization. We're going to talk about these 4 bullet points during this segment of this. Okay? This is basically my world. As a planning section chief for the incident management team for the state of Illinois, this is where I work a lot. So we're going to talk about this a lot. With management by objectives. Now, we've talked a little bit about it during this morning already. When you come into work, do you not have what we call standard operating procedures or standard operating guidelines, what we call SOPs and SOGs? Yes. The problem with SOPs and SOGs on a large-scale incident is this. SOPs and SOGs are made for what?
Standard.
There you go. What your standard is. That's a very good perception, sir. What the standard is on what we do on an everyday basis. If I have a large-scale incident, do my SOPs and SOGs account for that? No. And I'm seeing all the room here shaking their heads no. That is where this system now kicks in. If I see something that's going to go out of the normal business day for me, okay, out of standard operating procedures, what we talk about is we transition. The incident management system talks about management by objectives. That's where we start making that transition. If I look at something that's outside the purview of what my SOPs and SOGs are going to handle, I look at management by objectives. That's one of the things about the incident management system. When we started building it, was every day is every day. And we work in a quasi-incident management system. Okay? But if I have something that's large scale that's going to take days to weeks to years, in some of these cases, Katrinas, Sandys, this type, Does the incident management system need to be set by management by objectives instead of management of the incident by SOPs and SOGs? Yeah, that's where we look at that transition, okay? Because we were talking about the hoarding a while ago, and I kind of keep going to that reference. But is a hoarding situation something we handle on an everyday basis? No, we hope not. We hope not anyway, okay? So that's out of the purviews of what I would do on an everyday basis. Now, do I want to transition into an incident command system? The answer is, it's a high probability I would, because I want to set some objectives. And there's 3 governing things that I look at when I make that transition. I look at life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. When I look at my objectives that I'm going to build, my first and primary issue is what? Life safety. Okay, does that make sense? So all my objectives, I look at it and say, what objectives do I need to meet for this incident that is going to be life safety issues? I may have 1 or 2 objectives. Okay? Then I look at that. Next one, I look at incident stabilization. What do I need to do to stabilize this situation such that now we can start controlling that situation? Okay? And then we look at the third. We look at that property conservation. When we talk about property conservation, how do we now mitigate that to bring that back to normal? Does that make sense? So if I looked at an objective for life safety, okay, as an incident commander, I would go into a situation such as a hoarding, and again, where you kind of isolated on that hoarding situation, but it can look at any type of large-scale incident or an incident outside the purviews of an SOP and SOG. Say, okay, what would be an objective that I would want to make that would be a life safety? Well, what about provide for the safety of the responders? Okay, would that be an objective as an IC? Would I care about the safety of my responders? Sure, that's a life safety issue, okay? And then we look at that incident stabilization, okay? I might establish a transfer of animals out of this area to a safe site. Could that be an objective on that next one, okay? Incident stabilization, okay? What would be my property conservation? Well, mitigation of the site itself of the hoarding. After we get done with that and we eliminate the animals out of that situation, does that mean that we could just walk away from it? No. As an incident commander, I look at a whole. We look at it as a piece. We want to get those animals out, okay? We want to get those animals moved, or we want to get those animals taken care of, either moving them out or caring for them in place. But as that incident commander, do I have to look at the whole situation? Not only the life safety, the incident stabilization, but property conservation. So I may very well look, and one of my objectives might be to clean up of that area, to bring it back to where it needs to be, okay? Because most of us have seen, flooding, in areas such as Katrina, Sandy, this type. Hoarding situations, okay? If we just walk away after we get to the animals, is that incident completed? And the answer is no. So we look at those 3 areas, those subsets, okay, and make sure that as an incident commander, we base those objectives on those, okay? Questions? All right. So we look at the organization. What's great about the organization is when we go into work every day, and we talked about this just a couple of minutes ago, all of us have bosses, do we not? Okay? Even when I go home, I still have a boss, okay? So when we go into any type of large-scale incident, we call that boss that incident commander. Well, any situation will always have an incident commander of some sort. Sure, somebody that's in charge. At that point, what do they start doing? What's that incident commander start doing, or that person in charge of the incident itself? What do they start doing? Delegating. That's exactly right. Very, very good. I start delegating responsibilities. Because if I don't start delegating, responsibilities. Can I have so many responsibilities that I can't get my incident command done and my responsibilities done? Yes. Okay? So we start plugging in the things that we need to build that structure. Does that make sense? Okay? So as an incident commander, as I go up into a scene and I look at this, and this thing is starting to get larger, okay, I may very well have what we call a safety officer. Okay? I may say, you know, we have a safety issue here, and I want to make sure that I have somebody that's going to make sure that everybody's doing this in a safe manner. So as that incident commander, I want to stay at that 10,000 foot level. Why do I want to stay at that 10,000 foot level?
Because you don't want every little person coming to you with their problems, because then you can't get everything done.
Okay, so I have people that want to come to me. I might have, you know, a large group of people that want me to my ear, because what do they want to do? They know I'm the incident commander, and do what?
You organize everything.
I'm going to organize everything, okay? To look at the incident as a whole. Does that make sense? Because I have to basically manage this incident. If I get down and I get closer and closer to the incident, instead of looking at the incident as a whole, what do I tend to do? So I'm looking at it here at the 10,000 foot level. As I get closer and closer and closer to that incident, where's my focus now? Now I'm looking here. I'm looking at a piece of the incident. Okay? So as that incident starts growing, to keep that focus, I start plugging in personnel. As you said, I need to delegate. Is that an easy thing or a hard thing for us to do? It's a very hard thing. It is a very hard thing for us to do. Because what do we not have a lot of when we start plugging in personnel into a situation? We may not have a lot of trust. And to delegate, do I have to have trust? Yes. Absolutely. Okay? Absolutely. So as this system, as the incident starts growing, I can start plugging those pieces in. I'm going to need a safety officer. I'm going to need somebody that's going to help me with tactical issues. We call those operations section chiefs. Okay? If I have a hoarding situation, or I have a situation where I have a large amount of animals that I'm going to have to move, or I have flooding in a zoo, or I have a large-scale incident where I have a tornado and I have animals and stuff that are running around, do you think that I'm going to have a lot of media attention? Yes. Okay. What now, as an incident commander, am I going to plug into my system to help me with that? There you go, somebody to talk to the media. So if I can start seeing that this is becoming a media event, what else? So now I'm going to plug in. I'm going to say, you know, you've had the training for public information officer. I want you to plug you in. Okay, great, we've got him. Keep the heat off of me. Okay, make me look good in the media. Okay. Now, is that always done very well? No. Okay. So you want to have that training expertise, and we'll talk more about that later. So as that incident starts increasing, I can plug the components in that I need. What's the great thing as this incident starts now paring down? I can do just the opposite. So now the media is satisfied. I don't have the media. I can talk to you as the planning or the incident or the public information officer. Say you did an excellent job, but you know I think we got it handled. Okay. Appreciate all your help, and we're going to go ahead and what we call demobilize you. We're going to get you out of the system. Okay. And it goes back down, and finally, who's that last person out? That incident commander, and they're going to transition. Okay. Does that make sense? Questions? All right. So when we look at the organization itself, it's modular. It's modular. I can put those pieces, pull those pieces in and out. Makes it functional. Okay? Does that make sense? So as I need it, I can plug it in. As soon as I don't need it anymore, I can take it out and still not hurt the operation. I still don't hurt the operation itself. Okay? Keith talked about this. It's incident action plan. How many of you have ever worked on an incident or had an incident action plan that you've dealt with? Most of you in this room are shaking your heads, no, you have not. How many of you have ever played sports? Okay? Did you have a playbook? Yes. Okay? You had a playbook on how you ran plays, did you not? And if you didn't have that playbook and you were asked to do something, did you have this deer in the headlight look to the coach? It's like, I'm not sure what you're talking about. Okay? Or did you read your playbook? Well, you know, I was going to get around to that. Okay? Where do you think you're going to be sitting very quickly if you didn't read the playbook? On the bench. Okay? Ladies and gentlemen, that IAP is nothing more than the playbook for an incident. That incident action plan gives your objectives. It's a group of forms that is built by the team to give direction for those resources that we're going to talk about here later, how those resources are being pushed to that incident. Okay? So it says the objectives, and it gives tasks, what we call work assignments, on what you're supposed to do. One individual is going to be transporting. One individual is going to be in collection of the animals. The other one will be getting the animals in and getting them checked before we even get them out of that area, because do we not want to know whether we have issues with those animals before we put them with any place else? Okay? So we have work assignments. Everybody knows what their job is. Does that make sense? Questions?
So this is a per incident action plan?
Yes.
Not a whole coverage of-
Yes. Yes. It is per incident because is every incident different? Every incident, yeah. You said no, but is every incident has its own idiosyncrasies. Okay? We can basically build an incident action plan that's a skeleton plan. Okay? With those three, with the life safety, incident stabilization, property conservation, yes. We can build what we call skeletons, but each one is unique. And I have to build that incident action plan for each individual incident based on those unique characteristics, okay? Because in one situation, I may not need an operations section chief or a planning section chief. I may not need a safety officer. I may not need somebody for a different assignment, okay? But if I have a generalized skeleton that I can plug stuff into, sure, and those are out there, okay? Good questions. Manageable span of control, okay? Manageable span of control. This is very important on any type of a large-scale incident, okay? So, how many people do you like to manage? Less than 10, okay? How many people can you handle or manage?
About 15.
About 15. Sir, how many can you manage?
Well, I would say
No more than 8, okay? So I've got 15 to 10 to 8. They've actually done studies of how many people can I listen to before my mind starts going, okay? And that's 3 to 7. So when we talk about manageable personnel, the amount of people that I can manage effectively, they say 7 is about the most that you can handle, okay? Now, when we talk about this, we talk about span of control. Now, does that give me some solace as I go into this incident? I know what?
how many I'm going to have.
There you go. I know the exact amount of the maximum amount of personnel or resources that I'm going to have to manage. Okay? We say 3 to 7, 5 being optimal. Say if you've got 5, it's going to be a good day. Okay? Get up to there, that 6 and 7, you're up there and you're maxing it out. Okay? You're maxing out. Especially if I have some sort of situation that's highly intense. The more intense the incident, the less people you want to look at having to answer to you. Okay? That makes sense? All right. So there it is. That span of control, 3 to 7. Or 3 to 7, 5 being optimal. Those are the things that you might want to remember for later use, like maybe if you take this test. All right. Facilities and resources. And we're going to talk about facilities and resources here in this. There are some things that are specific that we want to make sure that we touch on.
This presentation introduces the ICS facilities. In less complex incidents, you most likely will not need many of the standard ICS facilities. However, in large incidents, such as a hurricane or earthquake, it is likely that all of these facilities will be necessary. The Incident Command Post, or ICP, is the location from which the incident commander oversees all incident operations. There should only be one ICP for each incident, but it may change locations during the event. Every incident must have some form of an incident command post. The ICP may be located outside, in a vehicle, trailer, or tent, or within a building. The ICP will be positioned outside of the present and potential hazard zone, but close enough to the incident to maintain command. Staging areas are temporary locations at an incident where personnel and equipment wait to be assigned. Staging areas should be located close enough to the incident for a timely response, but far enough away to be out of the immediate impact zone. In large, complex incidents, there may be more than one staging area at an incident. Staging areas can be collated with other ICS facilities. A base is the location from which primary logistics and administrative functions are coordinated and administered. A camp is the location where resources may be kept to support incident operations if a base is not accessible to all resources. Camps are equipped and staffed to provide food, water, sleeping areas, and sanitary services. A helibase is the location from which helicopter-centered air operations are conducted. Helibases are generally used on a more long-term basis and include such services as fueling and maintenance. Helispots are more temporary locations at the incident where helicopters can safely land and take off. Multiple helispots may be used. Let's review the different ICS facilities covered in this video. The Incident Command Post is the location from which the incident commander oversees all incident operations. Staging areas are where personnel and equipment are gathered while waiting to be assigned. A base is the location from which primary logistics and administrative functions are coordinated and administered. A helibase is the location from which helicopter-centered air operations are conducted. Helispots are more temporary locations at the incident where helicopters can safely land and take off.
All right, when we talk about facilities, are all those type important things for us to know? Yeah. If I'm responding to an incident, and I get checked in, and accountability is huge when we talk about any type of an incident. Okay? Do I want to know that you're coming in with your team of personnel? They're going to handle any type of assistance with animal issues for us. Animals that are out there, we have a cruelty situation, or we need to capture those animals to try and get them in a place that's secure till their owners show back up if I have a catastrophic event. Sure. I want to know if I'm going to check in, where I'm going to be at, okay? So if I'm going to look at that. So resources, as I talked about earlier, okay? You are a resource, and sometimes we look at it, and we look at the hardened pieces of equipment, a police vehicle, a big red truck, you know, whether it's a fire apparatus of some sort, and a medical transport unit. Okay, we want to. All those are resources, and we manage those. Okay, so it becomes very important where I need those resources to locate. So one of the things I talked about earlier with the incident management system, we go by management of objectives, okay? Management by objectives. There's another term that we use a lot, and that's conservation of resources. Why do I talk about conservation of resources within the incident command system? Why would you think? Go ahead.
You won't have that many resources to start with, and you don't want to waste any.
There you go. As you said, we may not have that many resources to start with, and we want to be able to keep control of the situation and manage those resources we have. Very, very good. Okay? Conservation of resources. Are we starting to see a lot of funding for any type of large-scale incident starting to decrease? The days of when we had an incident and them coming in with their baskets full of money is getting thinner and thinner, is it not? Okay? So as we get into an incident, is conservation of resources now becoming very big for us? Because what can you do with the resources that you have? And we have this little now set of resources we can help you, but we don't have a whole lot to manage this incident. Does conservation of resources now become very important for us? Sure, because those resources are now starting to become thinner and thinner. Does that make sense? Questions? Okay? So we look at this, categorization, ordering the resources. Do we want to have everybody on that incident that's going to order resources? So you're ordering a resource, and then you're ordering a resource, and you're ordering a resource, and you're ordering a resource, and all of you are ordering the same resource. When it gets here, it's like, wow, we got a lot of them. Yeah, one thing, okay, when we needed just one, okay? So we look at that system, and that's why we have a certain amount of individuals that are on that scene that can order resources. Okay? There are only three personnel that can do that within that incident management team. Okay? So we look at ordering the resources. Who's going to get those resources for us? Again, who can we delegate that in? Because we are what? We're built tactically, are we not? It's like, give us our stuff and let us do our job. Okay? So we delegate that again. We talked about delegation. So if I'm going to see a lot of resources that I don't have, again, we go into that span of control. Okay? We look at that delegation, and now we've got another piece we need to plug into that incident command system called logistics. Okay? So now they can get our resources for us. Does that make sense? Questions? All right. Tracking the resources. Do I want to know where those resources are on my incident? Now, if I have a hoarding situation, or I have a situation where I have animals that I'm trying to pick up from a tornado or a flood or something such as this, or I go in a zoological situation, or I'm going to have movement of my animals, okay? Tracking my resources isn't going to be really difficult, is it? Okay, I'm going to be able to see those, and I'm going to know where they are. But when I get into a large-scale incident, say your Katrinas, your Sandys, this type, do I need to be able to tell where those resources are? Yeah, because I might have resources here, I need them here, and if I'm here, I may not know that they're here. Does that make sense? So there's got to be basically a system in place, and that logistics will handle that for you. Okay? Reimbursing others. How many of us, when we go on to an incident, how many of us like to get paid? Okay? If you don't have some system in place to be able to make that reimbursement for your resources, does that become an issue? Yeah, because it's great. I came in and I was a resource and we really did a good job. But you know, when I put in for reimbursement, because they told me I was going to get reimbursed, and I didn't? When I have a large-scale incident like this, do I tend not to kind of go to that incident? Okay, yeah, and we do, and everybody here is kind of shaking their head, yes. Okay, we like to be reimbursed. Sometimes is that no more than a pat on the back and a thank you very much. Sometimes that's even better than monetary value, okay? But recognition, some sort of payment for that, some sort of reimbursement needs to be done, okay? We're going to talk about communications real quick. Communications. Do I need to have communications across the board so everybody knows what everybody's doing? Sure. And as that incident gets larger and larger and larger, what happens with communications on any type of an incident? They get more and more complex, do they not? The more people I have, the worse communications becomes. So as a situation, again, starts getting larger and larger, we look at that delegation piece and say, now we need somebody to manage our communications. How can we do that? We look at that and plug that in. As that incident commander, I'm saying we've got some issues here. Plug that piece in, okay? When we talk about that, again, some sort of a communications plan. Again, that's handled by logistics. So if I'm starting to see that, as that incident commander, I'm going to look at somebody and say, you know, I understand you can manage a household. You're a good logistics section chief, okay? If you can manage a husband, a wife, and kids, okay, and you can manage yourself and the budget, you're a planner, okay? You're going to make a wonderful logistics section chief, okay? And those are the people that we want to look at, who can take a lot and keep things in, okay? If I can handle a lot of situations, those are people who are built for that piece. Does that make sense? Questions? All right. So we're going to look at the last one, professionalism. One of the things we have to talk about, and we have talked a little bit about it, accountability. This is the piece that we don't do very well even to this day. 10, 12 years after the incident command system has really been put in place in an all-hazards world, we still don't do this very well. As that incident commander, what did I say at the beginning of this presentation? As that incident commander, you are what? You're commanding, but also what do you have? Responsibility for every resource on that incident site. Okay? If I don't know who's there and somebody does something wrong, do I still have to answer for their actions? The answer is yes. The answer is yes. Here's where we get into some issues. We make this call, we've got a large-scale incident, we need all the help we can get. Do we get that? Yeah, we have a lot of people that love to come in and help, but are they qualified to do the job? Do I know that they're capable of doing things properly? That's where we get into that check-in. They check in, we want to make sure that they're qualified to be on that, and we know that they're on that site. Does that make sense? Good. We talked about that incident action plan. We talked about unity command. Does anybody have any questions on those pieces? Okay, great. If you don't, we'll move on then. All right, span of control. We talked about that. If you came in and, sir, you as the incident commander, you know how many people are you going to have at maximum that's going to answer to you? Okay, that's the optimal. What's the maximum I'd have? 7. There you go. Remember that span of control, 3 to 7, 5 being optimal. Okay, 5 being optimal. So when we looked at that span of control, tracking resources. Why is tracking resources now become important? I have to know where those resources are, right? So if I track those resources, I know where they are, they're accountable, and if I need them and they're here, I need them over here, what can I do? Let's get them over, okay? Does that make sense? All right. So we look at that tracking of resources. Very, very important, because resources equates to what? Money, okay? Do I have to track my finances on any type of an incident? Sure, okay? So those equate to money, and I have to track those. Dispatching and deployment, okay? as it talks about up here. Okay, situation must be assessed and a response plan built. Okay, if I don't make the plan, do I know how many resources I need? No. So I want to try and look at that. Do some sort of planning instead of, just keep throwing things at it until it goes away. Okay? Manage them safely. We've kind of talked about that to this point. Okay? We want to do everything. We want to do it in a safe manner. Okay? Personnel and equipment should respond only when dispatched. Okay? Why is that so important? Go ahead. To prevent confusion. Okay, that'd be very good. What else? Kind of talked about it. I kind of gave you the answer just a few minutes ago. If I have everybody shows up on my scene, okay, what do I not know? I don't know how many resources I have, and I don't know who is on my scene, and I don't know whether they're qualified even to be there. Does that make sense? And can unqualified individuals make good decisions that they think are good decisions, but could be counterproductive to my operation? Yes, very much so. Okay? All right, good. All right, so kind of knock this up into a nice, neat little ball. We've talked about common terminology. So next time somebody asks for a squad, you'll go, what? What are you talking about? Okay? All right. So we look at that. Modular system. Remember, as this incident starts growing, what can I do? Delegate and start plugging positions in that I need. If I see safety issues, I can plug a safety officer in. If I need logistical issues, I can plug a logistics section chief in. Okay? We talked about that planning, management by objectives, and that incident action plan. That incident action plan is nothing more than a playbook, things that we're used to in our everyday world. Okay? There are playbooks. How do we get this operation done? Okay? They're based off those objectives set by that incident commander. Okay? Again, we have a lot of information and intelligence out there. How do we disseminate what is right? We vet that process, that information, make it intelligence, and then we can act on that. Okay? We look at that chain of command. Now, as an individual, I know exactly who I go to. I get one set of guidelines from one person, and if I have issues, where do I go? That one person. And that funnels that, it keeps from having issues. Okay? Transfer of command. Okay? We talked a little bit about transfer of command, but when I change from one incident commander to another, I want to make sure that everybody is on the same page. What went right, what went wrong, and what do you need to look for in your operation? Because I might have an operation that spans over several days. So I want to transfer that command. What went right, what went wrong, and what do you need to look at that might make this even better, okay? We talked about that span of control. We've talked about that extensively. We talked about in the video, your bases, your camps, heliports, okay? Those are things that are important, okay? We talked about resource management and that integration of communications, why it's so important for that. Okay? Anybody have any questions? Good discussions, good discussions. Appreciate all your input. Okay? What we'll do is we'll go ahead and take a break and start into the next section here in about, here in about 10 minutes. Okay? Thank you very much.